Ladies and gentlemen, take your focus away from the NFL schedule release that's going on for 2 hours and welcome to another edition of On the Sports Lines. We are live on Facebook right now at facebook.com/onthesportslines and tape delayed on YouTube at youtube.com/onthesportslines if you watch this over the weekend. We're back with the usual group of people this week. With me is Jay Kaplan. Hello, sir.
Good evening, Rabbi. How you doing today?
I am doing excellent. I feel like I'm zooming myself out already, if that is a verb. Also with me, back after a week's absence, is Mr. Anthony Strait. Good evening.
Hey, what's going on? Rabbi, you're playing double duty tonight. You was on another podcast before us. You put the plug in for Circle the Drain. I gotta catch up to it. But yeah, you're owning your stripes tonight. You're working really hard.
I remember when I used to not talk, and now I apparently just talk all the time. Before we continue this show, Mr. Anthony.
Yes.
You got yourself in a little bit of Facebook trouble this week. You can't respond to that too a little bit before we continue?
Well, let's just say, to keep making a long story short, got into a little bit back and forth with a few trolls. Got nailed by Facebook. I was put in Facebook jail for 72 hours. So I've been kind of teaching myself to clean up my act a little bit. Down the comment section. Yeah, it's gonna be a real learning curve, but you know what? I can't afford to have my account suspended for like 7 days, anything like that. You know, I kind of gotten adapted to I kind of got adapted to social media at this point. It felt weird, like especially during the Last Dance documentary, not being able to kind of post and comment about it. It felt strange.
Would have been weird. You would have probably put yourself back in Facebook jail immediately after that too, if it got.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I mean, that is a good point. When Jordan gambling stuff came up, for us, you know, we're over 30. It's nothing new to us. We were around, we saw it, but for the younger generation who kind of looked at him as this kind of, you know, individual who can never, basketball guy who can never do wrong. I mean, it basically showed that, you know what, you can't be the greatest athlete, but be human and be flawed. And I always said that for years about Michael Jordan. Like, he had his flaws like anyone. I mean, he wasn't perfect. He didn't really speak out on social issues and got a lot of flack for that. And then obviously the gambling situation and Atlantic City during a playoff series against the Knicks. I mean, a lot the younger generation for the first time is seeing this. So it's like, and they're seeing just how good those Bulls teams was outside of Michael Jordan. I think it's one of the best documentaries I've seen because now you're getting appreciation for the Dennis Rodmans, the Scottie Pippens, the Horace Grants, the Steve Kerrs, those guys who really chipped in. You saw just how good Phil Jackson was as a coach. It's not really about X's and O's. It's about his mending egos and personalities to see how he handled Dennis Rodman, the whole Las Vegas situation, and taking a literally midweek vacation. I think that's something we all wish we can do at some point.
You know what? I'll just leave y'all with this. I mean, it's the inside, behind the scenes stuff has been awesome to, you know, see that revealed. And I think it's good for the younger generation to see that Michael Jordan is, in a word, human to a certain, you know, just like the rest of us. I mean, it's a different level. As you know, as they said, you know, him gambling $10,000 on a golf game, it's like us gambling $10. So you have to look at it in the context of his income versus ours. So in that context, what he was doing is not a big thing. And I think he kind of summed it up in the best way that makes sense, and people should just take it. As he said, I don't have a gambling problem. I could stop gambling anytime I want. I have a competition problem.
You understand this too. You understand this too, though. Michael Jordan, when all this happened, there was no social media. So you can imagine how hard today's athletes has it. Well, they sneeze the wrong way. It's gonna be on social media. It's gonna be on Twitter. It's gonna be on Facebook. It's gonna be on these hot take sports shows before you know it. Whereas back then, it wasn't the case. I mean, if you missed the local news or didn't catch that 11 p.m. Sports Center, you wouldn't know if your team had won a game until the next morning. So, or if you check the newspaper. So it was a lot different time.
And you only got that inside, behind the scenes, closed door stuff when things like Sam Smith's, the Jordan Rules book, these tell-all type of books come out. All I will say is this, guys, is that I just more and more I'm starting to wonder inside my head, like just how high in terms of championships won, and legacy gained could these guys have had if Jerry Krause wasn't such an egomaniacal little Napoleonic complex having son of a what.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. I tried to speak ill will of the dead, but I think you kind of summed it up for me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've noticed before we continue on here, it's weird how in that '93 season, how much the Bulls kind of petered out. I feel like, but they luckily got their wings back in the postseason, and we're going to mention that again next week in our next New York list. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing. However, we got to get to tonight's case of business. So last few weeks of this show, we've been busy with NFL draft talk and other NFL news, and we've actually had stuff to talk about. But with that all behind us, it's back to the vast reality of no live sports. Unless you love you some KBO, Anthony. Unless you like Korea basketball, we're not going to talk that here. But we're going to
not yet.
No, never. It's a never for us. It's a not.
And don't even.
No.
Executive decision has been made here.
Yes. It's a 2-person. It's a 1-person decision this way. So as we did a few weeks ago, we're going to talk some New York sports lists. Tonight, we're going to look in the future. We're going to take our very imaginary crystal balls, unless I CGI them, which I'm not really willing to do right now, and tell you who will be the face of New York sports for the 2020s. Just like we did on the last 2 New York sports shows, we're going to do this fantasy draft style. Anthony will go first. He paid me some money under the table to get the first pick. That's all good. Jay will go second, and I will go third. We will go reverse for round 2, and then we will go reverse again for round number 3. Mr. Strait, you, sir, are on the clock. Who is your first choice for who will be the face of New York sports for the 2020s?
I just want to ask, it sure had nothing to do with the Hofstra connection that we may share. That
might have had something to do. That might have had something to do with it. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, my first pick, I'm gonna go with, obviously because I'm a Mets fan, I'm gonna go with Pete Alonso. And on the field, you know what you get with him from last year. His first full season at 25 years of age, 53 home runs, 120 RBIs. All-star for the first time, a starter no less. All MLB first team, which is the first year they actually done this. NL Rookie of the Year unanimous vote. Won that home run derby. We all kind of remember that showdown in Progressive Field, and obviously he broke the most home runs in a single season for a rookie with 53, which was held by I won't mention his name, but he is a draft pick on this list. That is a little foreshadowing in itself. But what separates Pete at this point is how there's a couple of things. Number one, how he has embraced being a Met, being in New York. And one of the things I remember he quoted was he wanted to be a good baseball player, but also a good person. And I remember being at Mets Diamondbacks last year. It was on the anniversary of September 11th. And the Mets came out with the cleats that were honoring the 9/11, the first responders, firefighters, NYPD, Port Authority police officers who lost their lives tragically on that day. And obviously, there was an issue with Major League Baseball when they allowed them to wear the cleats during the game, but they wore them during warm-ups and all the hats. It was actually Pete Alonso who fit the bill and got those cleats for all of for his teammates for that given night. We found that out obviously during the game. Also, the winnings that he got from winning the home run derby, he donated to first responders almost immediately after he won the home run derby. He's been a very prominent locker room figure. Remember, he started the hashtag LFGM, Let's Effing Go Mets. That's what
it stood for?
Yes.
Wow, after all of this time, I can't believe I figured it out.
Look, I've thanks for jail already. I can't say the F word for obvious reason, but that's what it means. It kind of spurred the Mets' second half run towards a postseason contention. And remember, they actually had the wild card spot for a few days with that come from behind win against Washington and what felt like a playoff atmosphere for that weekend set in August. But also, you look at what he's done off the field. He's been very much involved in charity. He and his wife have just started an organization as well. He reached out to a lifelong Met fan who's been quarantined a month ago, personally thanking her for all the support. He's been on, late night shows, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, to name a few. Well, it's too soon. I mean, he's 25 years old, so it's like, you kind of want him to kind of grow as well as a player, but he seems to get it as a person. He seems to take on the responsibility of being a locker room leader. And David Wright said the best. I mean, and obviously David Wright, being the last Met captain, said that he has it. He has what it takes to be that guy. And the Mets are kind of fortunate that they kind of lucked into Pete Alonso. Remember, they was not going to bring him up to start the season.
That's right.
And they were convinced to finally bring him up. His first home run, it was against the Miami Marlins. It was at the first week of the season, and from that point on, he was just on a tear. Like I went to 7 Mets games last year, and every time he went at bat, you kind of stop what you're doing because, at any point he get a home run. He was that good. I mean, he was that good. Obviously, the whole tearing his shirt off celebration after walk-off wins. He was part of that. It's really not a bad thing to say about Pete Alonso. And the thing that he's only 25, with so much potential, so much room to grow, it gives the Mets, an organization that has had some lean years, a lot of hope and optimism going forward.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and just a little bit of talk about that. I completely 100% agree with this pick because I think, first of all, the other team in New York, which we'll get to in a second, it has a bunch of stars, but doesn't really have one leader. Alonso became a leader of the Mets pretty quickly in 2019. I think he has been really a spokesperson for the city. I think he's reinvigorated a lot of stuff in the Mets organization. I think if it wasn't for their bullpen, the Mets would have been a playoff team in 2019 without a doubt, and they might have made some noise, especially considering who won the damn World Series that year. I think this is a very good choice for number one, and I think it's a consensus number one. Any more thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just wrap it up before I get into mine. When I look at Pete Alonso, I mean, look, what he did on the field is just obvious. I mean, it reaches up, it smacks you in the face. It's like you can't not see the production that he gave them. But what stood out for me is the way he comported himself, both on the field, in the locker room, in the community, with the media. To me, he's the logical progression in terms of the leader, the alpha of this team. To me, it goes Mike Piazza, David Wright, and then Pete Alonso. And I think if he's the next man up down that line, I think the Mets are in very good shape. And I think the city of New York is in very good shape for both the immediate and, the subsequent future. I mean, he's of all of the guys. I mean, you guys know I was a huge David Wright fan. I'm a Yankee fan, tried and true. But David Wright, the way he played, the way he handled himself, so much respect for the way that guy handled his business in all facets. And I see a lot of that in Pete Alonso. And to me, just as a New Yorker who wants to have those type of guys be the faces of the franchises in New York, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better guy for the franchise. And I can't argue it as as the first pick in this draft, if you will.
All right, and now we have a second pick of the draft, and we're not going to stray too far, Jet.
No, we're not. But look, I'm going to preface this because this is how I picked all three of these guys. For me, there's three criteria if you're going to at least even in the conversation for being the face of New York sports for this decade. You have to play the game the right way on the field to be a leader, be an example of your team's way of playing the game. You have to carry yourself the right way off the field to be the face of the franchise, an example of how to represent the team in the community, to the media, etc. And you have to have had a signature and or legendary season or moment, or a combination or series of both, so that your accomplishments stand out in the mind of the fans and in the media. And in the case of people like the three of us and the rest of the cast and crew of On the Sports Lines, both, because we are at the same time members of the sports media and huge fans. So with that in mind, my first pick is the guy that Anthony foreshadowed, and that's Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. And the reason I'm going with "Here Come the Judge" to start is because I think he's already well on his way to claiming this honor based on what he's already accomplished on the field and the way he's carried himself both on and off it. If there's a player in this generation of Yankees, the generation that followed Derek Jeter and the rest of the core four, it seems the most like Jeter in terms of playing the game the right way and carrying himself the right way off it, it's Aaron Judge. He, like Jeter, seems to truly understand what Joe DiMaggio's immortal words on that plaque leading to the dugout mean. Quote, "I want to thank the good Lord for making me a Yankee." Now, y'all remember that Judge exploded on the New York sports scene with a prodigious 2017 rookie season, which so far has been his only full season. He played 155 games. His slash line was 284, 422, 627, led the league in homers, runs scored, walks, drove in 114, and the home runs was the 52 that Alonso broke. He made the All-Star team, won the Rookie of the Year, finished second in AL MVP, won a Silver Slugger Award, and that was just on the field. I mean, you throw in his larger-than-usual MLB size. I mean, at 6'7", 282, he looks more like an NFL tight end than a Major League outfielder. And his Judge section in right field, where all the fans wear Judge robes and even the white wigs of the old, British courtrooms, and you've got the beginnings of a legend. And the key for him in keeping that legend growing, and by extension giving him a leg up for this honor, is staying healthy. He's only averaged 107 games over the last two seasons, and it's seen his numbers drop. His home runs have all dropped by almost half. His RBIs have dropped by almost half, and his runs scored have dropped by almost half. His slash line has dropped to 276, 387, 532. He also needs to do more in the postseason if he's going to cement his case for this honor. I mean, after all, this is the Yankees. World Series titles are considered the team's birthright, rightly or wrongly, guys. And it's how the team and its star players are, forgive the pun, judged. So you have to perform at the highest level on the biggest stage. And so far, that means literally willing your team to the World Series and then winning. And so far, that's missing from Judge's resume. This season looked like his best chance yet, but the longer we go without baseball, guys, the less likely that becomes. That all being said, I'm going to wrap it up right now, Rabbi. Judge has plenty of time left in this decade, again, barring injury, to put his stamp on this team and this city.
See, I disagree with you. The fact that Judge would have been injured early this season has actually made this, as Aaron Boone had said earlier in the week, with the amount of injuries that were coming into the Yankees this season, we're getting healthier, and I'm kind of okay with
that's
that.
Not my point with that. My point with that is there's going to be, drastically less baseball played, which is less opportunity for him to burnish that legend.
That's absolutely true. But I think one of the biggest things with Aaron Judge, as we mentioned before, is the injuries. And that's probably why, if we do this draft last year, he is a surefire number one, because he is the face of the New York Yankees. But now the Yankees kind of proved last year that they can do this without Judge. It kind of shows that this is as much of a team as the Yankees have had maybe since the core four era. I'm not 100% sure, because there's still a lot of untapped potential. They will be a heavy favorite to win the AL pennant this year, and rightfully so. Anthony?
What else 2 days? And he's like, number one, you go to Yankee Stadium and you get there early enough, you're hoping you're one of the fans that get to sit in the judges' chambers in right field. You get to wear the robes and the crazy hair. That's number one. So obviously, even in the Derek Jeter and the core four, you never really saw one of the players have their own fan section.
No.
The way Aaron Judge had. And yes, Jay, I did foreshadow this on a show back in 2017 spring training. I talked about Aaron Judge. It was his right field position job to lose, and I felt like he was going to be one of those young players that was going to be an impact. I didn't think I would be that correct. I mean, 52 home runs is a heck of a lot to introduce yourself to the baseball masses. But also, you think about, I think back to the 2018 American League wildcard game against Oakland, and I never heard Yankee Stadium, the newest Yankee Stadium. Now, they played playoff games. They won a World Series in 2009 in that building. I have never heard that building loud, and it felt like the old Yankee Stadium that was across the street. When Aaron Judge hit that 2-run homer in the bottom of the first inning, that building literally came apart. And I talked about how the Yankee Stadium, the newest one, doesn't hold the crowd noise in like the old one. But man, you would have thought it was the original house that we built that night. You look at the impact that Aaron Judge has had on the Yankees, and the fact that when he's in the lineup, you literally have to pitch around him. You cannot let him beat you. But that attributes to the rest of the lineup. You look at the Gary Sanchez's and whoever bats behind him, they see better pitchers because who bats in front of him. Last year it was Didi Gregorius. Obviously he's not with the team anymore, but he benefited greatly hitting second when you know this 6'7" larger than life Paul Bunyan figure in a Yankee uniform is on deck, and then you see him before games playing catch with some of the kids in the outfield. It reminded me of Nick Swisher, who was another guy who used to joke around and have a lot of fun with the fans prior to games, even between innings. I remember one game I went to, it was like the famed 3-hour rain delay and the game against Tampa, and the game didn't start till 11 o'clock that night. And I think Nick Swisher was probably the only one who had any energy that night for 9 innings. But look at Aaron Judge, the impact he's had on the field. Obviously, he's a marquee star off of it. He was on a video game cover, MLB The Show, a couple years back. Also, the Judge's Chambers, True to Life, made its video game debut. And if you play with the Yankees at home during that game, so clearly I agree with Jay on this pick. If you stay healthy, and obviously the injuries has been a bit of a factor in the last 2 years, I can see the Yankees. I still say this: they should have beaten Houston in 2017. They had their chances last year in the ALCS against Houston. 1 or 2 plays that goes differently. Who knows how that series goes? But obviously, the Yankees are not going to win a championship. They may win games without him, but to win a championship, to add number 28, they're going to need Aaron Judge in the lineup healthy.
Yep.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of these points. I think Alonso and Judge were a pretty easy 1-2 in this draft. And now I get picks 3 and 4. So I get the hard part. Thanks for me. All right. So pick number 3 for me is going to be one of 2 people on this list who hasn't actually played a game yet in New York. But the reason why for both of these is because we just haven't had any sports right now. But I'm going to go with the newest Yankee, Garrett Cole. Here's why I'm going to go with Garrett Cole. I think he brings himself a lot of pressure. First of all, I agree with Jay on all of the things that make this list, and I'm going to add a few things. Number 1, your team's ability to win a championship, because if you win a championship, you're going to be legendary in this area. We can't obviously predict the next 9 years, but we have to think of which team is in the best position to win a championship. And another thing that I add is your superstar potential. There are a lot of superstars on this list, and I think the 3 people who I picked are bona fide superstars. So let me give you the facts on Garrett Cole for a second. He is by far now the highest paid pitcher in baseball with a 9-year, $324 million contract. He will make himself a legend, probably much higher than CC Sabathia if he wins 1 or 2 titles as a Yankee, because he's going to be buoying a pitching staff, which is kind of suspect and kind of injury prone right now. Knock on wood. I'm going to be knocking on wood a lot of times during this talk. He will be a Yankee most likely for a majority, if not all of this decade because of that. I don't want to say albatross of a contract, but it's a biggie. Age is also a big factor in who I'm picking. So all of my picks are under 30. Cole is only 29. And last year he became the 18th pitcher with 300 plus strikeouts in a season. He did it without pitching a complete game because that's the way it now goes in baseball. 35-10 over his last 2 seasons as an Astro. Under 2.7 ERA combined for both years. His strikeout to walk ratio was 6.8. Are you kidding me with that? 6.8. And he didn't lose a regular season game from May on. And the only game he lost after that was unfortunately for him in the World Series. Top 5 Cy Young voting 3 out of the last 5 seasons. 200 plus innings the last 3 years. Here's where I knock on the wood in my desk a billion times. Dependable. He stays healthy. It is the Yankees, so who knows how this ends up going. I think the shortened season is going to help out Cole a lot pressure-wise because he can pitch more innings. He has been a workhorse for the Astros. Definitely, I think he should have won the Cy Young last year over Verlander. He's been staying loose. He has been playing catch apparently with Aaron Boone in the rich suburbs of Connecticut. And in his press conference last year, and here's one of the reasons why I picked Cole at number 3, he brought his sign that he had personally brought to Game 6 of the 2001 World Series. Let's not remember what actually happened in that game. That said, Yankee fan today, tomorrow, and forever. I think there will be immense pressure on Cole this season. He's going to be asked to do a lot, especially if Luis Severino, because Luis Severino ain't coming back. Paxton might be back, but he's not going to be the same. We never know with Masahiro Tanaka. I think Cole can do the job as a number 1 guy, and I think he'll be the number 1 guy for 5 to 6 years on this team.
Yeah. I can't argue that fact with you. I mean, look, Rabbi, you and I both know that New York Yankee fans have screamed at their front office for years about the A-list starting pitchers that they couldn't get to come to New York. But you and I both know it's not just about whether you have the talent. You have to have the mindset to be able to pitch in this fishbowl because if you are given that type of a contract and you are hyped up to be the ace of the starting rotation, that is a huge amount of pressure no matter what your contract is, and the contract just adds to it. So the question is, and not everybody can handle it. I mean, you think about the obvious case in point, Randy Johnson just was not the same here because New York was not meant for him. He does not fit here. You have to be able to fit here both on and off the field, deal with the media, deal with the pressure, deal with the expectations. And if anybody is set up to do that, it's Cole. And I think the fact that, granted, he's going to have to carry this rotation, but if anybody's shown that he can, it's Garrett Cole.
And he's done it for 2 teams.
And you know what? To be here.
Yeah, for Garrett Cole, I think the pressure he's going to be on to kind of take the Yankees to that level. I think of Roger Clemens when he came over, and obviously he was the hated Red Sox at that time, and he was coming over from Toronto, but he was still a bit of a Yankee nemesis because he had tormented him being in the American League East for so many years. But when Roger Clemens came in, the amount of pressure that he was under to kind of really contribute to that already good Yankee starting rotation. And you know what? He came through big time. I think of the NLCS, the ALCS in 2000. He pitched a 1-hit complete game shutout against a very good Seattle Mariner team. But I'm with Jay. I mean, it's the mentality. You got to be able to not just be able to perform in New York, but to handle the New York scrutiny when things do not go well. I think of guys like Roger Clemens and David Wells who handled it very well. And I also think of a guy that he's a Hall of Famer that gets kind of overlooked in how he was such a big-time Yankee performer. That's Mike Mussina, a workman-like mentality who went out there. You know what? He didn't blow you away. He wasn't fancy, but you know what? He gave you 6 7. He got the job done. He gave you 6 or 7 starting innings, and there was no coincidence that Joe Torre was routinely start a playoff series with Mike Mussina over Andy Pettitte or over David Wells or even Roger Clemens, who was on the Yankees team. And you mentioned Randy Johnson. I think of Carl Bavano, another guy who just could not handle pitching in Yankee Stadium. And this, as you understand, the Yankee Stadium is very unique in the fact that it does favor hitters substantially. We talk about that Whitefield porch. I mean, if you're a left-handed hitter, you love hitting in that stadium. And what Garrett Cole is going into that pressure because of the big contract and the fact that, yes, he is the answer to a trivia question, being the little kid with the sign in the 2001 World Series. He's going to have to be the ace pitcher that he really pretty much became last year in October for the Astros. The one game he lost wasn't really his fault. He pitched stellar. The bullpen just couldn't hold a lead for him. And I thought he should have won over Justin Verlander, which is, it says a lot about the Astros. Last year, when you had 2 starting pitchers who were Cy Young candidates. We're not going to get into any more Astro talk. We talked about enough of them in the offseason. But Garrett Cole, and like I said, the contract is one thing, but if you're out there, you're getting the wins. You're giving your team a chance to perform, and you show up in October, which for this season may actually be November baseball, and you add your name to Yankee. October, November. Hey, look, I just want to see baseball again. But if you can add your name to Yankee lore, and there's a long list of that, hey, look, dollars and cents is worth every penny. And I think it's a great choice for Garrett Cole, because right now, the moment he steps on whatever opening day is, the moment he takes the rubber, he is going to be under the spotlight like no other. And we know, and Yankee fans, for what it's worth, they're rabid, they're passionate, they love their team. But yes, I mean, you have a generation who have never seen the Yankees with a losing record. You have to go back to 1992. I was a second grader at that time with the Roberto Kellys and the Matt Nosa of the world that were kind of slumming the Yankee Stadium to a half-empty venue. You have, I mean, the Yankees, this generation, Yankee fans, the current generation, the younger ones, have been very fortunate. They have seen a good product and a good team take the field every day for over 27, 28 years. And that's been a very long time between losing seasons and that you have a competitive team. But now you finally got the ace pitcher that you've been desperately needing the last few seasons. It takes the pressure off the Tanakas and Paxtons because they don't have to be a Cy Young pitchers every time they take them out. Garrett Cole is like, hey, look, go out there, blow them away with your fastball. You got the slider. You know what you got to do. If he does that, he gets some 16, 17 wins at that number one spot in the rotation. The Yankees are golden to win the division, and who knows how much damage they're doing in the postseason.
Yep. Rabbi, I'm going to leave you with this. Anywhere else, a free agent signing, but on any other team in any other market in Major League Baseball, you're going to be under pressure to live up to the hype. Only when you come to the Yankees do you not only have to live up to the hype, you have to live up to the history. And that is not easy for a lot of guys to handle. It'll be interesting to see how Cole handles not only living up to the hype, but also the history.
Yeah, and just to note, this is the last Yankee on the list, so apologies to Gleyber Torres and Gary Sanchez, who I think would be two of the other choices for face of New York sports for the 2020s. I think the Yankees have a very bright future ahead of them. Moving on, my next pick. I think here you have a little bit of a drop off, but in fact, I think Anthony's next pick is probably really the fourth best choice in this whole list. However, I'm going to go with the guy who I think could be a big-time back for the Giants for many, many years, and that's Saquon Barkley. This is a leader, and this is a tremendous superstar. He has lived up to his number 2 draft pick status that he had in 2018. He has transcended a position on the Giants. We've not seen this happen in a very, very long time at the spot since Rodney Hampton in this area, and he is much better and much more talented than Rodney Hampton. Running back has been, let me just say it, shit on in the NFL by management, by coaches, by people around the league for many, many years. Saquon is one of the only 3-down running backs in the NFL, and he is probably the biggest touchdown threat running and receiving as anyone on the Giants is. He had a down year last year. Let me just tell you right now, though, 23 years old. He's still 5 years away from that magical 28-year-old where every running back apparently falls off a cliff and never comes back again.
Unless you're Frank Gore.
Oh, Frank Gore, the ageless New York Jets wonder now. 1,400 all-purpose yards and 8 TDs in a down year of 2019. Obviously, we'll talk about his 2018 in a moment. The Giants get to the level that they did back in the Eli era, winning 2 Super Bowls, and again, not being the team that went 12-36 over the last 3 years, as Mr. Dave Shepard pointed out to us a bunch of times last week. They need to have a healthy Barkley in the backfield. He's probably the most important running back in relation to his team outside of what Derrick Henry did last year for the Titans in the postseason, pretty much taking Ryan Tannehill to the AFC Championship game. And in 2018, Saquon's performance made him a surefire number 1 fantasy football pick. In 2019, one of only 3 rookie backs to go for 2,000 all-purpose yards, most receptions by a rookie running back. And he can easily become the face of New York if the Giants win a title in that time. He can easily be the face of the NFL because he's been a very calm individual. There's really been no trouble that he's caused in this area over the first 2 to 3 years on a team that is plagued with issues that hopefully just start to get resolved. And I think outside of one other person on this list, I think I'm not saying it, but I think he's the most talented athlete on this list. He has the highest expectations coming into the year because of what he did in Penn State. And I think the Giants needed a superstar. And I know they traded away a superstar many years ago in Odell Beckham Jr. because he was a head case. You don't get that with Saquon. No. You only get the injuries from last year. But again, a lot of those were freak injuries. I think Saquon Barkley is a very good choice to be the face of New York sports in 2020, and also doing it for a Giants team that when they're good, everybody loves them.
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys remember when we talked about him getting drafted 2 years ago on our draft show, the phrase we kept repeating over and over again was generational talent. I mean, you saw it in his rookie year. You saw the potential. And I think if the Giants can get more pieces around him, and I think they're finally headed in that direction, I think the year he had in 2018 will be closer to his norm than the year he had last year. But it's going to be interesting to see. And, he gives you all of the things that, Rabbi, I think both you and I, for our combined criteria, I think he meets all of them. And I think it puts the Giants, and you got to remember, the Maras have a there's a certain way they want the guys that they pay to behave, to act, to represent them. They're very specific about that. This is one of the oldest and most revered and respected franchises in NFL history. And they put a lot of stock in doing things the right way. And as you put it, Beckham did not. And that's part of the reason why he's gone. They want guys who not only show great talent on the field, but show great character off it. And so far, Barkley has shown both. So, as long as he can stay healthy, and yes, it's something we're going to say a lot tonight, guys, the future does look very bright for him in that Giants backfield.
Well, the one thing you're not going to get from Saquon Barkley is an ESPN interview with Lil Wayne sitting next to him as he's chewing out his coach and quarterback outline Odell Beckham. I still said that interview pretty much made up the Giants front office decision that, you know what, we got to move on from, he's like, you think, that we got to move on from Odell. Listen, if you want to go back to one game to how big of a threat Saquon Barkley is, go back to week 16 in Washington. He caught a touchdown pass, a 32-yarder, to open up the scoring, and then almost immediately he breaks a 70, 80-yard touchdown run when he literally made one guy just literally miss tackle badly.
If it was on the basketball court, we would have said he broke his ankles.
Yeah, it was that bad. But you look at he's been the Giants' most dual threat running back since Tiki Barber, and a guy who can run and catch out of the backfield. You hear the comparisons to Barry Sanders and the fact that how he can make guys miss. And also, he can run you over. And I grew up a huge Rodney Hampton fan. And and Ronnie Hampton was a very, not too flashy, but very downhill runner, but he has sprinter speed. So if you got in the open field, he will take off on you, but you didn't want to tackle him either. You want to hit him head on. And Saquon is the same guy. Look, I remember when he got hurt against Tampa Bay, he was on crutches celebrating his team win. I mean, that's something you want to see out of your star players. Even if he's not actively participating, he's involved in the game. He's rooting on his teammates, and that's something Saquon definitely has going for himself. I went to Dunkin' Donuts earlier, and he's all over the Dunkin' Donuts advertisements. He's been featured in NFL commercials, so he's obviously one of the young rising stars in the National Football League, who is pretty apparent, and he does play for one of the league's most storied franchises and the New York's biggest market, no less. But then when you look at Saquon Barkley, you also get a very down-to-earth, genuinely humble personality, and at least that's the vibe you get from him, is that he wants to go out, he wants to play the game. He's a father as well, so I think some of that has to do with it. He's a young dad, he has a young family, and he kind of wants to set the example. But the Giants, like I said, I mean, he got hurt, he missed a few games, came back kind of sluggish, but really picked it up as the season went along. And obviously, I noted the Week 16 game and also the Week 17 finale against Philadelphia, where the Giants playing for nothing almost played spoiler to the Eagles winning the division in that Week 17 matchup. So I think
spoiling an Eagles season is not nothing to Giants fans. You know that.
Yeah, of course I do. Of course.
But, not when you want the Cowboys, it isn't.
Well, no, absolutely not. But like I said, Saquon, obviously the health is a big thing, but he is definitely the Giants' go-to back for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say with Saquon is he has the highest ceiling, I think, out of anybody left in this discussion. I think he can really be, I don't want to say it, but like a Gale Sayers, Walter Payton type running back for years to come. Speaking of Giants and Tampa Bay celebrations, I think that leads us to pick number 2 for you, Jay.
No, actually, I'm saving that one for 3. I'm kind of doing this with my picks, solely because of the way I want to finish out. So for me, my second pick in this draft is the one that has the longest way to go, in my opinion, and that's Sam Darnold, the quarterback of the Jets. And that's mostly due to factors that are, for the most part, beyond his control. First up being the lack of success for the Jets and his injuries. Now, all that being said, you guys know that quarterback is the glamour position in the NFL, and being QB1 for a team in the NFL's largest media market, and with a fan base as rabid as the one you have with the Jets, the carpet is kind of rolled out for you. Whether you become worthy of becoming the face of the franchise and by extension putting yourself in the conversation for this honor that we're talking about or not is up to you. Sam's played 13 games in each of his first 2 seasons, so you can easily see the improvement from year 1 to year 2, despite playing in a brand new offense each year. Look, 2 of his 3 fourth quarter comebacks and 3 of his 4 game-winning drives came last year, things that we use to measure franchise quarterback worthiness. So he would seem to be on his way. When you add to the fact that he did it all without much in the way of playmakers in the backfield, Le'Veon Bell is not Le'Veon Bell of the black and gold, and Quincy and Nunn getting hurt, and Herndon getting hurt, not really a lot of guys to help him, and it gives Jets fans hope that a franchise quarterback, the first one really since Namath, is possibly there in the making. Look, Darnold's had great games and he's had lousy games, with the words great and lousy being in huge all-cap 72-point type. Now, look, maybe once the O-line improves, and Becton, we're hoping, is help that in a huge way, and he gets the weapons he needs in the backfield and on the perimeter, we'll see him take that leap into the top third of NFL quarterbacks. And if he does that, then he puts himself in the conversation for face of New York sports as well as face of the Jets franchise. Now, look, our good buddy Joe Tafaro doesn't see it, and he said that multiple times.
No, absolutely not.
He doesn't, but I disagree with him. But that's because I saw a lot of Darnold on tape, games at USC, and I'm seeing the progression. But the thing is, the competition between him and the guy who's my final pick in this draft will be interesting to watch, and I hope we get to see both of them going head-to-head for this honor for the entire decade.
Yeah, with Sam Darnold, I think, like I said, last year, he missed the first 4 games through the mono, which I gotta be honest, I don't understand who gets mono these days. But I don't know what he did to get that, but he better cut it out. I'm just saying. But his thing in the Jets organization, he needs to knock it off. You should not be. There are a lot of illnesses you should stay away from. Mono is definitely not one of those things you should be involved with. But I'll leave that to them. But when Sam Darnold, and I remember the first game he started was against the Cowboys, and it was a Jet victory. He didn't play lights out, but he made the big plays. He made the big throws when he needed to. And that's kind of what Sam Darnold kind of did. He was playing behind the 8 ball last season, trying to come back. Remember the Monday night game against New England when he was apparently seeing ghosts?
3.6 passer rating for that game, that 33-0 loss.
Yeah, it's going to take a while for him to kind of live that one down, to say the least. But you think about Sam Darnold and the situation he came into, you got to go back to Chad Pennington, really the last Jet quarterback that was good, but also consistent. Like, you knew with Chad Pennington, you want to get a good quarterback, you want to get a guy who's a leader, this good decision maker on the field, but more importantly, he knew how to win. And I remember Chad Pennington was his first 5 years, the Jets were in the playoffs 3 times, and even his first season starting, they rallied from a 2-5 start and won the division, and even won a playoff game. Remember, Jet fans remember 41-0 over the Peyton Manning-led Indianapolis Colts. For Sam Darnold, look, the situation's perfect for the Jets, I think, really need to get him more weapons. I don't think Le'Veon Bell is the guy in the running back position, because he just doesn't fit the blocking scheme, more importantly, that the Jets offer up. I mean, he's a very patient runner. It doesn't quite work well. But Sam Darnold, he needs the reps, and that's where the health comes into play. He has to stay on the field. I think back to two years ago in a game against Green Bay in a shootout, he held his own against Aaron Rodgers of all people, and it just almost pulled the upset. So he has shown his potential and his upside, but he has to stay on the field. I feel like with that Jet defense, maybe and the way that the Jets came on strong late in the season and kind of finished up playing well, maybe if he plays the full season, the Jets possibly could have pushed for a wild card and a very wide. And we saw it was a wide open AFC playoff picture going into the final week of last season. He has to stay on the field, and that's a long story short. I think the Jets have gave him the defense where he doesn't have to go out and win every game, just don't lose it. But at the same time, the Jet fans, I think at this point, they want to see more of Chad Pennington and dare I say Joe Namath, and less of Ken O'Brien.
I said Joe Namath. You can.
Yeah, and less of Ken O'Brien, Brown and Nagel, Boomer Esiason on the back end of his career.
Very back end of his career.
I'm going to really, really way back with those. But I think Jet fans, they've been starving for a franchise quarterback for a long time, and Sam Darnold, the situation's there for him, but he has to stay on the field, and that's been one of the things that kind of sabotaged the Jets season last year.
Yep, as I said, Rabbi, we're going to say, as long as he stays healthy a lot tonight.
That's the drinking phrase for tonight's game. Let me just say this, though. First of all, I think this is a make or break year for Darnold because there is a specter that just left the division in Tom Brady. And I think a lot that makes the AFC a little more wide east, a little more wide open. Remember, the Jets finished their season last year 7-5. And I think that's a huge point to mention for the Jets, because I think that's an easy. You know what? I'm going to say it's an easy division for them to win. I don't think the Patriots are the Patriots anymore without Tom Brady, and I don't think Josh Allen is going to do what he did again. So if Darnold has to make the leap, it's this year. Also, I would not have put him on this list. Here is why. I think, not because I think quarterback of the glamour team, albeit the second glamour team in New York, who was always the stepsisters, is good. He has no team around him. And I think I appreciate what you just said with Mark Sanchez, Anthony, but there's a reason why he made it to the AFC Championship in the first 2 years of his existence. They had a ton of talent around him that kind of stepped up in the postseason. His wide receivers, and Nunez already been placed on injured reserve for 2020. That's how sad it is in the wide receiver land for the Jets. And even though they will have Bell and Gore in the backfield this year, I just don't see the Jets having enough talent around Sam Darnold to really do much of anything. And also, and we've mentioned this on last week's show when we talked about Jameis Winston, if Darnold keeps throwing interceptions at the rate he's been throwing them, like he was in his last 3 seasons, his last in college and his 2 seasons with the Jets, he's been wildly inconsistent. Jameis Winston got 5 years with Tampa Bay. He is now a backup in New Orleans, and he was basically run out of starting jobs in the NFL. If somebody plays this inconsistently at a position where you need to be consistent, where you need to hit 60 to 65% of your passes, and you need to keep your interceptions down in the low teens, if he doesn't do that, Sam Darnold is never going to succeed in this town.
Well, I'll tell you this, Rabbi, if he does, he'll be the first USC quarterback to succeed not only in this town, but in the NFL in a very long time. And look, I understand where you're coming from, but look, it's a matter of how much of Darnold, what we saw on the field in terms of, the mistakes he made is due to, as I've said more often than not, when we've talked about the Jets, going all the way back to his junior year at USC, he has not played in the same offense for 2 years in a row. So, but he still improved. And look, again, I think if he stays healthy, and I think now that he and Gase have a year together and they kind of can get on the same page, I think you'll see him start to step up. The question will be, and no quarterback can do it without weapons. So I think how much he improves and how much he makes that leap will be directly related to what they put around him, because he did plenty last year without any weapons. If he doesn't have any weapons this year, he's not going to make the leap we all think he needs to put himself in that conversation. If they get him weapons, I think he'll put himself in that conversation. But again, it is a wait and see.
Absolutely is a wait and see. All right. Anthony, you have the 6th pick in this draft. Your 2nd pick. Who you got?
Well, you know what? I am looking forward to really seeing this superstar, and I know I say this with a lot of confidence because I know she is going to be one. I'm taking Sabrina Ionescu, the newest New York Liberty draft pick, the number 1 overall pick in this year's WNBA draft. But I'm just going to read out because I couldn't remember all this. I tried very hard. I couldn't remember all these accomplishments, but I'm going to read it out for you. This is Ionescu's career in Oregon. Associated Press National Player of the Year, joined Breanna Stewart, has the only unanimous winner in award history, 3-time Pac-12 Player of the Year, Pac-12 Tournament Most Outstanding Player, owns the NCAA record, men and women, for career triple doubles, 26. First player in NCAA history, women and men, to reach 2,000 career points, 1,000 assists, 1,000 rebounds in a career, led the nation in assists, almost 10 a game, 9.1, while averaging close to 9 rebounds a game at 17.5 points. Ranked 4th with a 3.05 assist to turnover ratio. That is John Stockton numbers, FYI. Oregon's all-time leader in scoring, assists, 3-point field goals, double-figure scoring games, led the Oregon Ducks to 3 Elite 8 appearances, 1 Final Four appearance. And if there was one thing, unfortunately, this pandemic that is still ongoing did take away, was that the Oregon Ducks was 31-2 and were the number 2 ranked team in the nation before the men's and women's NCAA tournament was canceled. So unfortunately, we did not get a chance to see Ionescu possibly lead her team to a national championship. Of course, the Australian South Carolina Gamecocks may have had something to say with that alongside Gina Aoyama and UConn. But you look at the fan base that she has grown, when you have the LeBron James, the Steph Currys, the Gina Aoyamas of the world, And obviously, the Sue Bird spoke highly about her as well. Sue Bird, basketball legend, a big name in her own right, if we don't forget. But also, we talked about her, was a much talked about relationship with the late Kobe Bryant and how much Kobe was such a fan of the women's sport. And I see INSQ almost as if it was fate. You know, the Liberty getting the #1 overall pick, a team that was in transition, a team that had actually traded away another marquee name in Tina Charles just a few days earlier before the draft. They are, you know, kind of in a midst of rebranding. They're moving into the Barclays Center, new logo, new colors, gone as the kind of any resemblance or even connections to the former NBA counterparts, the New York Knicks. You look at INSQ, it's the fact that she just has the makeup to play in New York. She's actually looking forward to playing in New York. And I look at what she was able to do in college and the fact that she is literally going to be the leader of that next generation of women's basketball that we've seen kind of coming along over the years. She's going to the WNBA's one of the founding franchises that you have to go back, you know, remember, Rebecca Lobo was her very first superstar. Then you had the Becky Hammonds, Teresa Weatherspoon, who is a basketball Hall of Fame. I was a big teaspoon fan. Kim Hampton, Sue Wicks. And obviously I mentioned Tina Charles. They have Kia Nose on the team as well. So that is a team full of talent, but INSU is going to be the centerpiece for the New York Liberty. But also she is a star in the biggest market. And with the Liberty being back in the New York metropolitan area, I think it's great for the WNBA as a whole. INSQ being on that team and now being front center stage, not just with the talent, but her hard work, her determination ethic. Obviously, she is a student of the Mamba mentality, as we all know. I am really, really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see her in person. I'm a big fan of the WNBA. Obviously, Jay, you are too. We have been to the Liberty games when they were playing at Madison Garden in years past. Like I said,
the fact that she didn't get a chance to do that just kind of it eats at you because you really wanted to see it. But I mean, she has no qualms about stepping into New York, being the face of this franchise without even lacing up her, her sneakers and putting on her jersey. I think she'll be able to handle that expectation, and I think she'll thrive on it. And to me, that is going to be something that's going to be fun to watch as, again, she charts her own path here, even though she is playing in the #1 media market in the world. And what's going to be, and how she, again, is the part of Kobe Bryant that is so ingrained in her we're going to be able to watch that as her career progresses. Kobe was such a mentor to her, and that relationship, you just wish that it's one of those things, again, where we are going to miss Kobe not being here, because you and I both know, Anthony, that Kobe and Gianna would have been sitting courtside at the Barclays as often as they possibly could to watch this girl play. She was that connected to the two of them. And it's going to be fun watching her play and watching her carve out her piece of this city for the next decade and longer.
So Anthony, when we did this little pre-draft on Monday and we talked about it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that pick. It's an amazing pick for two reasons. Number one, I related to it before. One of the two people in this draft who have not actually played a game in New York yet, but is embracing New York, kind of like how Garrett Cole has. And also, I think she is the most talented athlete out of these 9 people that we have. She has the most talent. She has the talent to pretty much rule the WNBA for, as you just said, Anthony, a decade to come. She'll probably be the first one of the current WNBA players who gets their own shoe. Nike has already signed her to a very, very lucrative deal, and Oregon, Phil Knight. I think you can connect the dots over there. Yeah, Sabrina is there's only one player who I've seen who's had more hype going into the WNBA who did not play in UConn, and that's Brittany Griner, only because of Brittany Griner just being a physical phenomenon. Sabrina is a student of the game, and despite the fact that the Liberty are still in a relative, it's great that they're moving to Barclays, but again, it's still the WNBA. It's still a little trouble in the way of getting fans, and Sabrina probably will not be the best player in the WNBA coming in on day one. She'll have a little bit of a learning curve, and Elena Deladon was just a beast last year in the WNBA, even injured or not, and she has the 6'5" frame to really excel in the pros. I think Sabrina, though, is one of the most hyped women's players that we've seen in women's basketball for like a decade plus. And again, sad that she couldn't get a chance to win her title to really cement her legacy. But we know who she is. She even spoke at Kobe Bryant's memorial service. She is definitely the face of the WNBA.
Yeah. And she's going to do something that I think we haven't seen for the Liberty basically since Becky Hammond left. She is somebody who is going to put butts in the seats. I think the New York Liberty will see a spike in attendance solely because she is someone that everybody is going to want to see.
And Jay, I'm only mentioning Becky Hammond 3 times in your discussion. That's
also. Yeah,
I still rarely get a chance to talk about Beck on the show, so I got to take my opportunities where I can.
Yeah, and also I'll finish my point with the Ionescu is the fact that after she was drafted, her jersey is actually the top seller for the WNBA, which is this says a lot of volumes. Also, you mentioned it. One of the days, 2020 has been a tough year, obviously, but one of the days we unfortunately are not going to see is Kobe and Gianna Bryant attending that first game at the Barclays Center. But I feel like with the expectation, of course, playing in New York, but also because that relationship and the fact that Kobe was such a mentor to her, we don't get to see the next evolution of Mama mentality in Gigi, because we definitely saw greatness kind of growing this seed right there. But we will see at least some of it with Ionescu when she takes the court for the Liberty for the first time. And and also like you said, I mean, I'm looking forward to when her and Diana Taurasi get to go match up in our regular season game. So it should be definitely fun to watch when she. And like I said, the Liberty, they're a team in transition, but because now they're playing back in the metropolitan area, they were playing obviously Westchester, which is kind of hard for fans to get to. They were lowest in attendance last few years. Now being back at the Barclays Center, fans will get a chance to really get to the games now. I could definitely see them in the top 2, top 3 in attendance next season. And she got the right coach. I mean, a coach that installs the pick and roll system that is tailor-made to really utilize Sabrina's talents, which is whether she's a great scorer, she's a tremendous passer, and we know she will hustle and rebound when needs to.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be so for the first time in a long time, the Liberty are going to be one of those teams to watch in the WNBA upcoming season.
Yep. All right, guys. So we have one more pick to go for each of us. Anthony, you have pick number 7. Go ahead.
In my third and final pick, excuse me, I'm going back to the boys in Flushing, and I'm going to go with probably one of the croakiest soon-to-be stars for the future. I'm going with Jeff McNeil. I mean, I'm going to be like this. The Mets are probably the one team that leads the league in fun nicknames. You think about the Polar Bear and Thor and the Degrominator, and now you have the Squirrel. Like, this is pretty much Jeff McNeil in a nutshell. But you look at it, he is a throwback to old school baseball. Has a hitter where he favors more contact and power. Sure, he added 23 home runs last year to go with 75 RBIs. But remember, he was also an all-star, even though the 5 people at Progressive Field did not quite get the picture correctly during his all-star game appearance. He did lead the league in hitting from 2/3 of the season last year. He finished with 318. But also, he has a social media presence. I mean, he kind of lit Met fans' name is Dog. I don't even know the name of the dog, but also he was a Met representative for the MLB The Show 20 Players Tournament, Players League. Got to the semifinals. He participated in a Met simulcast a few days ago where he talked to the Met broadcaster SNY and how he's getting in shape. He has a social media presence, but he also has a quirk about him that's making him likable to Met fans. He is obviously the work ethic is there, but also is the fact that, like I said, he's very old school. I mean, he doesn't strike out often, which is which you never see in today's MLB, where it's all home run or nothing. And then you look at the fact that he's in the same locker room with Pete Alonso and with Jacob deGrom, whereas you also have other somewhat larger-than-life personalities that have kind of come on their own and also marketable. But Jeff McNeil, in his own right, is starting to become one of those names that they kind of look to as far as the Mets if they want to win. And he's become one of the building blocks for the going forward in a foreseeable future. If the Mets are going to do anything in the National League East, a very competitive National League East, might I add, we have Atlanta and Washington, and of course Philadelphia is not going anywhere. McNeil is going to have to be that all-important utility guy. And he also had the highest percentage of pitches inside the strike zone, 85%, meaning that he saw a lot of good pitches. I mean, if you're hitting in front of Pete Alonso, you're going to get a lot of good pitches to hit in any at bat, but it's the fact that he made the most of them. And also, how can you not like a guy who's nicknamed Squirrel or the Flying Squirrel? I mean, they had a Squirrel Met promotion last Friday in honor of Jeff McNeil. And when his name came up in possible trade rumors, Met fans were livid. Even his teammates came to bat for him on social media. Marcus Stroman in particular, who was only like a Met for 5 minutes last season, came to his defense. But that just tell you how McNeil's personality in that locker room, and the Mets are full of colorful ones. Like I said, you got Brandon Nimmo, who seemed like he never had a bad day ever in his life, but he spent the first base on a walk. That team, like they just became like a likable team late last season. Not just the way because of the late season run toward the playoff spot and the fact that they just have all these likable personalities and likable figures. And Jeff McNeil is starting to come into his own as well. And when you're on a team with DeGrom and Alonso in the same clubhouse, you kind of get overshadowed. But McNeil has managed to kind of avoid that. And keep this in mind: his first major league home run came off the now defending champion Washington Nationals, and Tanner Roark, who is a very good pitcher last time I checked, closer the last time I checked. So like I said, McNeil has a very high ceiling, and I don't know if there's any much else. Bless you, by the way, for those of you who probably didn't see that, I had to just sneeze. So even in the era of Zoom, because Zoom tight is good manners. So for those who are watching on Facebook, that is a lesson in being an adult 101 in the quarantine 2020. But yes, I'll leave the floor to you guys. My third pick is Jeff McNeil. I'm going with him. I'm being somewhat of a homer because I'm a Met fan, but being around this team and you see these personalities, a big homer. But it's because of the personalities, and like I said, I can't disagree with any of these picks because they all have the upside of being what New York sports is all about.
Yeah, Anthony, it's funny, when you threw Jeff McNeil's name down in our production meeting, I started to think about it. The Mets have always seemed to have had the type of player that you would refer to as a Swiss Army knife, a guy who can play multiple positions, a guy who can do all of the big and little things you need, a guy who basically fits wherever you need him to fit and performs wherever you put him. He's just that constant. Even though he moves around a lot, he's a constant and he's a consistent part of your lineup. He kind of, the guy that immediately jumps to mind as comparison is a guy who thrived in a similar situation with the Yankees last year, and that's DJ LeMahieu. And I think the comparisons are obvious and warranted. I think every team needs a guy like that. He, as much as no matter where you put him, he fits both on the field and in the lineup. It's the same. You called it out. It's the same in the locker room. He just fits. Does he get overshadowed by the guys with, the bigger nicknames like, Thor and the polar bear and the like? Sure. And it's not easy to hide in the fishbowl that is playing in New York. But, every team needs what you call, like I said, a Swiss Army knife, a glue guy, the guy who is just there day in, day out. You may not, you may forget about him from time to time, but he's a constant, and he's a force that kind of like keeps the team together, even though he flies under the radar. And you're right, Anthony, if they're going to win, not only do they need the big names to step up, but they need guys like McNeil to do what he does on a daily basis in order for this team to take it to the next level and contend for a title and potentially win one.
Okay, hold on a second. I'd like to pick a lot. That's great. But McNeil, this is no disrespect to McNeil, but he has only played 196 games as a New York Met. He has hit very good for average. He's one of the best hitters in the league. And if you're going to pick anybody else besides Pete Alonso, I think McNeil embodies this team and embodies the city and embodies social media as good as anybody. You're right for being a homer, Anthony. How could you not put Jacob deGrom on this list? Jacob deGrom is a 2-time reigning Cy Young Award winner. And yes, I understand his record over the last 2 years is only 22-17, and I know he's gotten no run support, but how can you put a guy who has probably had 2 of the best pitching seasons in New York sports history, who has an ERA of a combined ERA of the 2 years of 2.06? In this day and age, you need a workhorse in your lineup, and Jacob deGrom is that. He's signed a big money contract to stay a New York Met. He's made no qualms in the media about being traded, unlike Mr. Thor, who had many times this season, who's now in Tommy Johnville. I'd love to pick up McNeil at number 7, and it's a good pick. But if I'm going to pick a second base of the New York Mets after Alonso, it has to be deGrom. Anthony, defend yourself.
Yeah, you know what? I was actually thinking of okay, do I go with McNeil or deGrom? But the thing is with the deGrom, and obviously a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, his numbers speak for itself. But I also saw that with Tom Glavine, a guy who was just as good. But you know what? Off the field, David deGrom, he has a presence, but that's because of what he's done on the field. As much as you don't really see or hear much out of him off the field. Granted, he has been a great representative of the Mets. I was thinking more of, okay, what do you do on the field, but also how much do you make yourself presence known off of it? And I feel like deGrom is more of what we know about him on the field. He's very private off the field. Obviously, you don't see him really out about as much as other Met players. But when I think of Jeff McNeil, and he's been the Mets Swiss Army knife, and the Mets have been very fortunate as a franchise. Like, you normally get one guy like that. The Mets have 2 who have been falling into that farm system with McNeil. And you also throw in J.D. Davis, another guy who just seemed to be bouncing around and played everywhere last season. But they produced when both of those guys were in the lineup. And also when the Mets, and also deGrom has been just deprived of run support the last 2 years. Last 3 seasons, I can tell you that. But when the Mets offense struggled, especially down the stretch where they did miss the playoffs, McNeil missed time. He was hurt and missed several games, and the Mets lineup kind of got stagnant. When he got back in the lineup, he was kind of the engine that really started that lineup where he was throwing as Alonso and Conforto in the middle of that lineup, the big RBI guys, because McNeil's ability to get on base, whether with hits or even drawing walks, because he's a very good solid contact hitter. But also this offseason, you're kind of seeing him more of off the field presence, a little more than DeGrom. So I think that's why I kind of put him just above Jacob DeGrom, and not necessarily because he's a better player, but also I just feel like, okay, he's making himself a little more,
he fits more
a
of
little more available.
More of the criteria we talked about.
A little more available to the general public, the masses that probably don't get in contact with don't really get to communicate with baseball players. By the way, he does answer fans on Twitter, which you don't really see too many athletes doing unless they're being trolled or they're replying back to something nasty. In the case of Jeff McNeil, he regularly kind of commentates with people on social media, which I think is a good thing, and make himself more available. And also, he's been fun to watch if you watch these MLB tournaments that he participated in as a player. Like, he's more lively than probably anybody that participated in that tournament. He looks like a young guy that I can see maybe, down for the next, because he's still young in his career. He's 27, 28 years old, not quite into the prime of his career yet. Well, in the case of DeGrom, he's a face now, as opposed to, okay, is he going to be a face down the line in 5 or 6 years, even though he's on a long-term contract? We don't know. But right now, we're seeing the best of Jacob DeGrom. As far as Jeff McNeil, will possibly just scratching the surface with possibly more to come. So that's kind of my criteria. I wasn't just thinking about on the field as much as off of it as well.
I like it, but unfortunately, though, I will have to say this. He's more of a Greg Maddux than a Tom Glavine. I think you comparing him to Tom Glavine could be the kiss of death there. Jay, final thoughts before we move on?
Look, I'll say this. I mean, look, I think Anthony defended himself well, and I think based on the criteria that I mentioned at the top and that you added on to, I think McNeil fits into more of checks the box on more of those than DeGrom does. And I agree with Anthony. DeGrom is right now. Can we project that line? Starting pitching is tough. You know that. A guy like McNeil, with all of the things, both on and off the field, that he brings to the franchise, it's possible, he could fit the bill down the road. That all being said, Rabbi, you're up, right? Or am I?
No, you are up. But McNeil, I understand it, but I think there's a lot more superstar potential, and it really fits the other two qualities a lot more. All right, Jay, we have another New York quarterback to go. Give me pick.
Yes, we do. So my final pick, is the one I'm most intrigued with, and as I said with regards to Sam Darnold, being QB1 in the largest media market in the NFL, the opportunity is there for you to claim the face of the franchise and potentially the face of New York sports for this decade. So I'm talking about Daniel Jones, who is the Darnold's counterpart with the New York Giants. Now, for me, the difference between Darnold and Jones is that Darnold only has the usual hype and expectation to deal with that comes with being a top 10 quarterback draft pick in New York. Jones has all of that, and he's trying to escape the very long, very large shadow of Eli Manning, who was the epitome of what it means to be the face of this franchise, as well as being among those who would be in the conversation for face of New York sports during the years that he played. Now, look, it helps that Jones started his career with a bang with that 32-31 win against Tampa Bay, his first start culminating with that fourth quarter comeback game-winning drive, 23 of 36, 336 yards, 2 TDs in the air, 2 on the ground. Look, did he turn the ball over too much in his rookie? Yeah, 12 interceptions and 11 lost fumbles is way too much. Ball security 101 will be his offseason primary responsibility there. Look, as is the 6 games where he was sacked at least 4 times, including one where he was dropped 8. But, you also have 3 games where he had at least 4 touchdown passes and no game where any moment looked too big for him. You get excited for the future he could potentially have, especially with, as you noted, Rabbi, Saquon Barkley alongside him in the backfield. Look, get him more weapons on the perimeter, get him better protection, and Andrew Thomas at tackle is the first step in that regard. Give him a defense that won't force him to outscore every opponent. And you got to see the future, and it does look bright if all of those things come together. Look, I said on our draft show the night the Giants got reamed by all of the trolls on social media for the Giants taking Jones at 6. But I said this because I agree with our buddy Joe Tafaro. If this kid truly is Eli 2.0 and he has a similar career, then Joe is going to be patting himself on the back for the next 10 years for calling out this pick on New Year's Eve 2018 to me over Twitter. And look, we may not, and if that all goes the way Hollywood would script it, if you will, he will not only be the latest face of the franchise, of one of the franchises in the NFL, but he could be very well the face of New York sports for the next decade if it all comes together like we can see it coming together. I'm going to be watching. It's going to be fun.
And I would say this too. I was also a guy on our draft show the night Daniel Jones was drafted. I said to everyone there, I remember speaking to Sean Roman and Steve Ferguson that night, I was like, the Giants just hit the jackpot because they had arguably the best quarterback that was available fall right into the laps. I know a lot of people say maybe they shouldn't have traded up too high to draft him. And a lot of fans said that they wanted Dwayne Haskins. But I had a chance to watch him play at Duke, and he was able to do more with less. And that reminded me of Eli Manning when he was at Ole Miss in his first few years with the Giants. And Daniel Jones comes off kind of cut from the same cloth as Eli Manning. And that's not a bad cloth, now, mind you. I mean, they had the quarterback coach that was that kind of linked the Daniel Jones and Eli.
Eli's coordinator at Ole Miss and kind of head coach at Duke.
Yeah, it was kind of like the link to obviously the change of the guard. Mm-hmm. But also, when you looked at Daniel Jones, obviously, there was no moment that was big. He played well in quite a few games last year. Obviously, the protection was a problem. He got sacked quite a bit. Turn the ball over. He's going to have to learn how to ball security. That was an issue at Duke also. He turned the ball over a little too much. But I felt like he was the best guy to step in right away if the Giants was going to make that quarterback change at some point. And I was proven right because Dwayne Haskins looked bad, really, for the most. Like, when I got to see Dwayne Haskins, and he looked like he could not read a defense. No. And I was like, that's the difference between playing at Duke, where he didn't have so many weapons, was playing at Ohio State, and everyone is almost an All-American on offense, and you're not playing it, and the defense in the Big Ten seemed to be a little overmatched. So I was like, there's a big difference, and you kind of saw it last year. But Daniel Jones, you give him some more weapons, kind of shore up the protection. Like I said, Jones is a good start. They already have Hernandez on as a guard, so they're trying. It's the building blocks is there. I feel like the Giants really need to help him out with a defense that can hold a lead because there's no feeling than having to that day back to the 2000 Rams with the greatest show on turf and the worst defense in the National Football League simultaneously, where you had to outscore yourself. I mean, you're never going to win games when you have to outscore a defense that can't stop traffic on 8th Avenue, let alone NFL pouring offense. But I feel like with Daniel Jones, like I said, year 2 is going to be very critical for him. I don't know if he'll have the kind of leap that Eli Manning had from year 1 to year 2 when he led the Giants to a division title. But Daniel Jones at this point has a lot of growing to do. I think he's going to vastly improve. I think the Giants will do a better job of putting the weapons around him. He'll have a Saquon Barkley, who he didn't have him for a number of games last season. It was apparent against New England on a Thursday night. And again, the Giants were in for most of the game. And one of the few times the defense actually played well last season. So with Daniel Jones, you just hope that since he's following Eli's footsteps as far as the star quarterback of the Giants, that he follows in Eli's footsteps as far as career progression from year 1 to year 2. And we kind of forget that the NFL expanded this playoffs, so it's one more wildcard spot available. And maybe the Giants can throw to Hassan has a maybe 9-7 wildcard who can sneak in. And let's face it, you don't want to be a team that wins a division and have to play on wildcard weekend. We saw what happened to New England last year. We've seen it in the past. You kind of want to have that week off. You don't want to run into, and the Giants have done well as a wild card team in recent memory. Their 2 Super Bowl runs has been from the started at wild card weekend. But I know that's getting a little ahead of myself there. But with Daniel Jones, you hope that the progression can just continue. He didn't play well. He played very well last year, all things considered. But he's gonna have to protect the football, and that's gonna be number one priority heading into the new season. You gotta protect the football. I mean, you can't you're not gonna win games if you're beating yourself time and time again. There was plenty of times where Daniel Jones made that critical fumble. He's got obviously pocket presence. He made some bad decisions as far as passes, throwing the football, but that's things that you learn with reps, and hopefully Daniel Jones, obviously being astute and a la Eli Manning and being in kind of a film room stiff, maybe that will help him going into the second season.
Yeah, Rabbi, I'll leave you with this, and I'll let you take it from there. The couple of things that people should keep in mind coming into Daniel Jones' second season. We've been talking all night about if they stay healthy. It's not so much Jones staying healthy, but Saquon Barkley needs to stay healthy. Evan Engram needs to stay healthy.
The biggie.
Golden Tate needs to stay healthy.
Sterling Shepard, another one.
Sterling Shepard. These guys, it's not – Jones has the weapons. They just weren't healthy, and he didn't have them all at the same time for more than one game, it felt like. So if he has that, then you figure he's going to be in good shape. Here's the other thing to keep in mind. Jason Garrett is now his offensive coordinator, and Jason Garrett has experience with an offense led by a young quarterback that is backed up by a stud running back.
The only problem is we have no idea how Jason Garrett's going to be as an offensive coordinator after spending 25 years as the Cowboys. You said it perfectly, Jay. Daniel Jones, when they made the decision to take out Eli Manning in what was a very controversial decision in the time in week 3, which everyone said, oh, you're giving up on the season. No, you're giving up on the season. Jones played probably one of the best rookie games I think you could ever imagine that had everybody on Monday morning saying, oh, he's not that bad. 23 of 36, 336 yards with 2 touchdowns in that game. There weren't too many games last year. Again, as you mentioned, Jay, there was not too many games last year where Jones looked pedestrian. He looked ready for the moment. That New England game, 15 to 31, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, but in the game, the entire game. The only 2 games I can really say that were really bad games was the first loss he had in the NFL to Minnesota, and that loss to Green Bay when I believe it was really bad conditions that day. I think Daniel Jones is – I agree. Now, the one thing I think about if they stay healthy, I don't think there's any team in the NFL this year that lately that always has all of their weapons at 100% at the same time, especially in what we might get this year and honestly in future years to come. But I think Jones can be that quarterback that can lead the team to the future. The Giants are very lucky that they're literally going to go from Eli Manning to Daniel Jones and not really have anybody in between, that they're going to have kind of like a cult-like run at starting quarterback for 20, 25 years. I think Jones is the base of this team for a very, very, very long time. I don't expect playoffs this year. I think this is not as make or break of a year as it is for Darnold. Because I think the first step for the Giants is to get back to respectability. I don't think it's a situation like the Browns, but I think they need to get back to that 500 level before we think about that next step about making the playoffs, Anthony. But I truly think this Giants team has something special with Daniel Jones. Any final thoughts before we go to pick 9?
I would say this too. I would say this about Daniel Jones. Like I said, talking playoffs may be a bit of a stretch. The Giants will have the number 2 toughest schedule going into next season. So that's one thing you kind of got to throw out there. But with Daniel Jones, like I said, year 2, you just hope the progression continues to go upward. And he has the weapon. Like I said, the weapon. Unlike Donald, he has the weapons. He has the offensive firepower. It just have them all at the same time. And also, you also got to and you could probably help me out with this with his name. Another young receiver for the Giants that came on last season really strong.
Darius Slayton.
Yes, and that's another weapon. You throwing with the guys who was in and out of the lineup, and him and Slayton really did have a bit of a rapport last season. Going back to the preseason. Remember, he played well. He led a game-winning drive in New England to end the preseason. So, like I said, Daniel Jones, you just got to hope that from year 1 to year 2 that the learning curve isn't as big, because he has kind of learned by trial by fire last season, going in week 3, and granted, that game against Tampa Bay has been reran on NFL Network about 5 times since. But you hope that's just the beginning of what could be a really good long-term career for the Giants as far as being the franchise quarterback.
Rabbi, we talked about this on the draft recap show last week with Shep. It's not all about, do you have the talent? They all have the talent. It's talent plus fit. Jones has the talent. The Giants are the right fit for his skill set and what they're looking to do at the quarterback position as an organization. And I can't stress how important it is to have those two things meld together. And it seems to be so far so good for Daniel Jones. We'll see.
I was going to actually say that about Sam Darnold. That was the other thing that I thought about him earlier. I don't know if the Jets are the right fit for him yet. You can already see that with the Giants.
Daniel Jones. Yep.
All right. So
Rabbi.
Yes, let's take us home finally after 1 hour and 45 minutes on this show. All right. So we've had 5 different organizations represented on this draft. We have not had any hockey yet in this draft. It's about time we do it. I'm picking Artemi Panarin of the Rangers as the final pick of this draft. We were talking a little bit before about my first pick, Garrett Cole, on how he's going to have to live up to a big contract. A little less than a year ago, the bread man, as affectionately called because of his love of Panera, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony.
Yeah. Pretty much.
He signed a 7-year, $81 million contract for the Rangers, which is very important for multiple reasons. Number one, the Rangers are kind of were in a second rebuilding mode, and they needed somebody to come to New York as a stud. They needed to show that big names would be committed to them, and he was really the first person. Did they overpay for him? Maybe, but the return has been huge. Let me just mention the stats. He's probably the most pissed about this little break that we have right now. First Ranger ever to have 6 3-point games in the span of 9 games. Second Ranger ever to have 9 points in the span of 4 consecutive games. Second Ranger since 1980 with 67 points in the team's first 45 games. With the Rangers, he has already achieved career highs in goals, assists, and points, and he's only played 10 less games than he did in his career high of 79. In his career high of 79 to 82 games, he's only played 69. He would have an outside chance this season. He has, I think, 93, 94 points right now, but he would have an outside chance this season that the Rangers franchise record of 123 points with a full season under his belt. That record set by Jaromir Jagr in 2005, 2006. And that was really the spawn of that first Ranger playoff team. Remember, Lundqvist was a very, very young goalie. He might have even been a rookie. And that really set that long drought after year of Glenn Sather misses. Panarin had the Rangers in striking distance of a playoff spot at pause time. They were only 4 back, I believe, of the final playoff spot. He has been involved in 54% of the Rangers' goals this season, whether he scored or assist. That is an insane number. In the year Jagr had, he was involved in 56% of the goals. He is the centerpiece of David Quinn's team. He is only 28 years old. He is undrafted. He is undrafted, possibly one of the greatest undrafted NHL players we've ever seen statistically. He has came in played for the Blackhawks, played for the Blue Jackets, but he is now the centerpiece of David Quinn's team. And you can argue that he has had the greatest first season for a New York athlete being acquired as a free agent in this town in over a decade. That's what I want to see out of Garrett Cole. And even no matter what happens this season, sure, Panarin is playing for a team that was in its final rebuilding, but all of a sudden, the Rangers have already gotten back to a level that I don't think we thought they would get back to for 3 or 4 years because of Panarin. And again, first season, he's still got 6 more to go, and that doesn't even count contract extensions. He could definitely be the face of this town for the 2020s.
Well, I mean, Rabbi, he's off to a start that definitely, has him as the face of the Rangers if, for the next decade, if he, is consistent with this. I mean, he's the perfect guy to kind of take the mantle from King Hank. I mean, Lundqvist is coming to the tail end. He was the face of the Rangers and in the running for face of New York sports for the decade that he was here. This kid coming in, and it's easier for a forward, a goal scorer, a sniper to take over the mantle of the face of the franchise because goal scorers are the ones who make who get the headlines and get the press. Sure, a goaltender will win you a series, but a guy like that, a guy who is the offensive linchpin, who is a hat trick waiting to happen, those are the kind of guys that more often than not throughout not just the history of hockey, but I mean, the history of the Rangers, those are the type of guys who are the face of that franchise. It's where the goalie owns that spot for an extended period of time like Lundqvist has. So I think, look, we know who Lundqvist's replacements are. They're going to battle it out to see which one ultimately takes over. But I think this kid on the front line, on the number one line, this is the guy who is going to be the face of this franchise for the next 10 years. Whether he's the face of New York sports, well, you'd be determined by how often he brings home Lord Stanley's chalice.
Well, you gotta love a guy who loves bread so much that he doesn't care if it makes you fat. But but here's the thing, though. Panarin, you think about David Quinn, you think about the Rangers season early on, and Coach Quinn, a lot of criticism was because he was shuffling lineouts, kind of shuffling lines and trying to figure out a fit. Panarin was the one guy he didn't have to worry about because he was like, when he was on the ice, good things happen for the Rangers. I mean, look at his plus minus. He leads the team with that by itself. And obviously, if you follow me on Instagram Live, on my Instagram stories, I am playing NHL. I'm a big NHL 20 fan. I'm a video game fanatic, and obviously my team is the Rangers. Panarin is the guy I'm putting on the ice every time I play that game because I know if I'm taking a slap shot from the blue line or trying to set up a pass, it's going to work out very well with this guy. But the thing with Panarin is he is kind of become kind of the stalwart to a Ranger team kind of in transition. You think about this. They were the team in rebuild. They're kind of coming, and him and Lundqvist had really carried that franchise for a very long time. They won games that because of him and Lundqvist that they probably would have lost with any other goalie in net. Mm-hmm. But now you see that you're getting some of the younger players kind of step up a little bit. Panarin kind of leading the way. Mika Zibanejad as well, who was kind of leading the team in goals. And you think about the Rangers' young goalies kind of showing that they're more than capable of being part of this rebuild. I'll tell you what, Jeff Gorton, general manager, and John Davidson, the team president, has done a really good job and kind of not only rebuilding the franchise kind of from the ground up, from obviously the team that had went to the Stanley Cup final just 6 years ago, to now a team that, they're young, they're rebuilding, but when the season unfortunately came to a screeching halt, they were kind of nipping at the buzz of a New York Islander team that had kind of stormed out of the gate and had came back down to them, and there were two teams basically fighting for 3 playoff spots in the back half of the Eastern Conference. So it would have been interesting to see how the Rangers could have finished the season strong. Obviously, there was 3 weeks left in the regular season when the season was put on pause. Hopefully, we'll be able to kind of see a finale, as you will, as far as who will make the playoffs and evidently crowning the Stanley Cup winner for this season. But Arturo Panarin, I mean, you know what? It's great that we're seeing at least a hockey being represented, and I'm being picky because it is the Rangers, of course, but he has really stepped up, and he got out to a slow start. We kind of forget about this. He didn't score a goal like really for the first 4 games that he played, and really toned it on from that point on. So you won't get an argument out of me being a Ranger fan and obviously being a sports personality and also being a stalwart of NHL 20 of PlayStation 4. So yeah, I definitely agree with this pick.
Yeah, the master of NHL 20. One more note, Jay, there is no contest of who's going to take over Henrik Lundqvist's place. Igor Shesterkin would have been my other pick for this. 10-2 in his 12 starts so far with the Rangers. He is by far right now, and we're really kind of making it, kind of makes it, Henrik will definitely probably not be here for 2020, 2021. It's just a question of how he leaves this area. Yeah. One more note before we go, guys. Today is the 4th anniversary of a moment that is special in Anthony's heart, and honestly should be special in all of our hearts. This is the 4-year anniversary of Bartolo Colon's only home run back in 2016. A moment that will live in the infamy of all of sports history. It's an amazing moment, and for New York, it should be in all New York Mets highlight reels for years to come. So any final thoughts on that?
No final thoughts on that. How telling is it, guys, that not one Nick or Net made this list?
So interesting thought before we go on there. I was actually kind of pondering. First of all, Kyrie would have been obviously KD or Kyrie would have been the first choice, but KD is a little older. So you don't know what his stability will be for the decade. Almost everybody on this list is under 30, and we don't have a lot of time left, so I'm not going to really mention too much on Kyrie. Anthony, stop. No. But I think Kyrie is very injury prone right now. And as for the Knicks, like I said, it's not going to be anybody on this team. Sorry, RJ Barrett. It's going to, if there would ever be a person on this team, I would even go with someone like Anthony Davis, who is probably not going to be a Laker for too much longer, in my humble opinion. I think he'll leave the first chance that he gets, but who the hell knows with the Knicks and Nets right now.
Yeah, and going back,
I know.
And going back to the Bartolo Colon home run, it was like, it felt like I was watching The Natural, but in real life.
It really is.
I mean, it was
legitimate slow motion.
Like, I mean, think about this. James Shields is the answer to a trivia question. Who gave up the only home run of Bartolo Colon's career? I'm quite sure he loses a lot of sleep at night because he's not going to forget it, unfortunately. He probably got friends that would never let that down at all, and ex-teammates who was on the Padres at that time. But when you look at that was probably the slowest home run trot in history. And he wasn't trying to show anybody off. This wasn't a showboat. This was Big Sexy in all his glory, moving about 2 miles per hour, because we know he can only move at 2 miles per hour. But I mean, that just tell you how popular he was with the Mets. And to hit that home run and to see the entire Met dugout kind of clear out and in Ricky Hazen fashion as it is, and only to mob him, even Gary Cohen said, it's one of the great moments in baseball history. Even if it's not exactly one of the best baseball moments in history, it's still fun to watch. And obviously, if you're a Met fan, it's definitely one of the more memorable, if laughable moments in Met history. And a franchise that's had its share of heartbreaks as well.
Yeah,
I'll leave you guys with this. As the Yankee fan, I'm just going to chime in with this. It is just the latest exhibit in a long line of exhibits of why baseball, to borrow from Tom Hanks, baseball is very much like a box of chocolates. You get 9 innings, sometimes more, and you never know what you're going to get. Some days you get
and by the way, for James Shields,
a perfect game, some days you get Big Sexy hitting a home run.
Yeah, and for James Shields, by the way, to quote Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball.
No, there's not. Anyway,
2 Tom Hanks's references, and I think that's our limit. Rabbi, take us out.
it really is. That does it for tonight's show. Thanks for joining us tonight on Facebook, on facebook.com/onthesportslines. And thanks for catching our youtube.com/onthesportslines page. We are also on Twitter @onthesportslines. We will be back next Thursday. You guys want to know the topic?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
Best New York sports teams to never win a championship single season. I kind of hinted at one of my picks, but we will leave you on that.
Okay.
For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz. We urge you all to stay healthy, stay inside if you can, and to all our essential workers all over the globe, keep fighting the good fight as we go through this pandemic. We are on the Sports Lines. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.